And welcome back to the Black Psychologist Podcast. Appreciate everybody coming in and listening to us. We're on episode 4, so we continue to appreciate all the love and support. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here listening and watching us, so we definitely appreciate that. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Kyle Osborne, your clinician and psychologist. And of course, I'm not here by myself. I'm here with my guy, my co-host. He's a gentleman and a scholar, Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing today, bro?
Hanging in, man. It's March, so here we are.
Right.
We're making our
Yeah, I
way through it.
just again, I want to just thank everybody who's tuned in, who's taking the time to listen. We're really appreciative of that. And just to remind everybody to subscribe and hit the like button, and please, leave a comment. Good or bad, they all count.
Absolutely, absolutely. We definitely appreciate that. So before we get into our topics of discussion for today, it is March, so we want to give a special acknowledgement and a shout out to all the women because it is National Women's History Month. So
Right.
all the women in the world, we definitely appreciate you. You are the reason why we're here. Okay, you are the mothers, you are the aunts, you are the sisters, you are everything to us. So we definitely, even though it's every month is Women's Month, but this month in particular, we're gonna highlight that. So happy National Women's History Month to all the women out there. And in addition to National Women's History Month, it's also National Social Work Month. So I've had the pleasure of being able to work with some really great social workers in a lot of my different, either whether it be practicum experience or at work, or even right now I'm working with decent social workers. And so, social workers don't get a lot of credit and they don't get enough credit for the work that they do. They do a lot of the coordination as far as aftercare for their clients and getting them set up for housing and everything else, and just kind of coordinating treatment team meetings and so on and so forth. So I just definitely want to give a special acknowledgement for all the social workers out there that work in hospitals, private sectors, public sectors, different organizations. I appreciate everything that you guys do. So hope you guys enjoying your month. I hope the hospitals or your places of business are celebrating you appropriately and showing you your justice due, because you guys do a lot more than what people see. So definitely happy National Social Work Month to all the social workers.
That's a fact. Just to kind of double back for a minute, I definitely got to give a shout out to all of the women, have influenced me, pushed me, but specifically, obviously, I got to give Mama Coleman a shout out, because without, pushing me, setting that example, I definitely wouldn't have, achieved, the level of education that I have.
Facts.
And I would have gave up, if we're being honest, if it wasn't for her and for the other strong women that I've had in my life. And I got 7 aunts. So that's a fact. So definitely want to give them that credit, and, just recognize all of the women in general who have, paved the way in terms of this country, and done great things. And in terms of the social workers, we definitely want to recognize the social work team, us working in hospital settings, they're definitely integral. And a lot of things wouldn't move forward without them. So, we can get into it, but just, wanted to make that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out to Mama Coleman. All right. For giving birth to this guy right here across the screen. Doing good work on that. And also, speaking of ladies, we're also going to give a shout out to our tech specialists and consults, our consultants. Your niece, Jason, has definitely been hooking us up, man. And
your daughter as well.
yeah, absolutely. Yo, you're funny because she was just calling as you were talking. She was calling and FaceTime. And so, I know she's going to hit me with a you hate me text and stuff because I didn't pick up. But absolutely, we want to definitely give a shout out to your niece and my daughter for helping us with the tech aspect of the world. We're young, but, these kids are something different. They know all the ins and outs. So they've been helping us with the tech aspect of everything that we're doing here. So shout out to you young ladies. Keep helping us and keeping us in line and keeping us going on that front.
Absolutely.
All
right,
right,
let's get into these books.
Yes, sir. All right. So first topic on the agenda, for those aren't aware, Earlier in the week, Dr. Seuss is having 6 of his books pulled off the shelves due to the material contained in it is insensitive to, and it has a lot of different racist and insensitive images, insensitive to the Asians, insensitive to African Americans. So they made the decision to pull those 6 books off the shelves, and wanted to get your thoughts and on that issue. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Jeff?
Well, again, I mean, listen, this may not be a popular opinion, but well, I think it was the right thing to do. Okay. First of all, I mean, we're trying to create a more inclusive America, right? And that's part of it. You have a daughter. I don't have any children yet, but we have to think about who are going to be the consumers of these books, right? So I think it was the right thing to do. Second, we got to recognize how big of a corporation this is. And they issued an apology, and they specifically stated that the books portrayed the portrayals of people were harmful, and wrong. Mm-hmm. So if we think about how large this corporation is, how much money they've generated over the years, they acknowledged that they were wrong. So for us to be debating back and forth, whether or not it's cancel culture or not cancel culture, whether it's right or not right, I think is absurd. The second point that I'll make very quickly is that this is not cancel culture, right? This is the example of it not being cancel culture. This is an example of a pattern, of racist images and stereotypes being portrayed in books, multiple books. And I will tell you that cancel culture is saying something that might be off color, offhand, and it's one time and you get canceled for it, right? This is a pattern. Right. And one thing that I will note is that these books were published between 1937 and 1976. Okay. 1976. So what conversation are we having? This is after the civil rights movement, bro. Mm-hmm. Right. After the civil rights movement, these books were still coming out. So to really have individuals, really champion and arguing aside, they're arguing for nostalgia, right? And they're arguing for their privilege, right? They're arguing because in their mind, they remember reading Cat in the Hat and it was a good book. And I understand that, but it's much easier, to say something is okay, and say, yeah, it's just a part of history and everybody should get over it if it doesn't impact you, right? So for me, when I think of these books, I think of Confederate flags, right? Mm-hmm. There are plenty of people who will tell you the Confederate flag is fine, right? But they don't feel terrorized when they're walking underneath it. I do. You understand? So if it affects you, it's different. If I had a child who was a young Black male, young Black girl, I don't want them reading images that portray them as monkeys, right? That portray their full features, their full lips, their full noses, mm-hmm. As negative in terms of a beauty standard. So I know that's a lot, but I'm gonna be very honest. Like, of course, we're not speaking literally, but I'm cocked and loaded when it comes to this conversation because it's absurd to me, that once these things are pointed out and brought to the mainstream, there really shouldn't be such an argument. At least my humble opinion. But what do you think?
No, I totally agree. It's the folks that are still arguing against this, again, are in the majority. So it's not affecting them, right? And it's been like that for quite some time, right? So, we're talking about one, it's not cancel culture, like you said, right? It's more of a recall. This is a product recall, all right? Because it's a situation, okay?
Right.
Because they have more than 60 books, right? More than 60 books have gone into publication, like you said, from 1936 till now. So we're talking over 60 books. We're talking 6 books that are being recalled and that could be redistributed if they just adjust those features, right? So you're not canceling anything like this. They've made like over $700 million globally, like over their period of time. And for me, when we're talking about, okay, people that aren't offended with this, I'm thinking more it's a situation where at the root of it, it brings up an uncomfortable conversation about racism, right? This is where it's like, oh, well, we should leave them ad. And no, we're not going to continue with the status quo because it makes you uncomfortable. Like, how do you explain this? And yeah, this was done at a period of time where the majority ruled. And you know what? We're just going to put these different images out here. And, you know, there's not going to be any type of recourse. There's not any type of fallback because those that were being oppressed or marginalized, right? We didn't have that voice, right? It's not like it just became offensive. It's been offensive.
Now, this is, but this is the problem, right, bro? And we'll get right back to this, but it goes along the same lines. Have you ever looked up racist Disney characters?
Oh, all day. Yeah. And Looney Tunes.
Right. And you look at, these are the characters that were in publication. You know what I'm saying? Like these were images that several people sat around the room and thought it was not only okay, right, but we're going to market this, right? This is funny. This is what we're going to market to our children. So the only reason why that's possible is because the people who they were offending and oppressing did not have power and weren't in that room, right? Or the one guy that's in that room knows that if he dies on that hill, that'll be the last fight he has, right? So we're in a situation where there's a power differential. But I think what you said is very important, right? Because it didn't just become offensive, right? It goes back to the same Confederate flag kind of conversation. A lot of people would like us to believe, that us as African Americans just woke up one day, and now we're all of a sudden we're offended by the flag, right? We've always been offended, right? But when you have the momentum to change something, that's when it has to get done. But again, I think it comes down to power, right? A power differential. And what we're seeing now is that technology has shifted the power differential, right? Because technology has given the power back to the masses in a lot of certain situations, right? So if the CEO of Goya Foods aligns with a politician that certain people don't like, they can start a hashtag, start boycotting certain products, and guess what? They're gonna get a statement, they're gonna get a change. The behavior, not saying that the ideology of the person will change, but the behavior will change, right? And as people, that's all we can ask for. I don't care if Dr. Seuss was racist. I don't care, right? I just don't want those racist images in the book, right? He can be racist in his house, the same way Walt Disney is well documented what some of his beliefs were, right?
Yeah.
As long as he keep it in his house, I don't care. You understand? I just want my child to be able to go to Disney World without being terrorized, right? Or without feeling that their natural features aren't as beautiful as someone else's, right? So I think that's the problem, right? Like you said, we're looking for the product to change, right? And as long as they do that, I'm good with it. As long as they do that.
And that's the thing, right? At the end of the day, these are children's books. And I think also with what gets lost in, it's been like this, we should keep it as it's nostalgia, so on and so forth. We're also forgetting the important piece is that children are reading these books. And and I know that children are able to understand way more than they're able to articulate. Right. So just because they can't say something's wrong or something's off doesn't mean that they're not, looking at something that's not making sense or that's confusing to them. Right. So if we're inflicting like these racist images, on them before they can actually express and articulate that there's an issue, like we're inflicting harm on them. Right. We're inflicting harm that they're not even able to process. They're already seeing this from a very early age and they're not able to process it. So this is the problem. Like you were saying, like, don't put it in the book, right? Don't put it in a place where, like you said, either my kid or your niece or anyone else that's coming up that's watching or is going to read it and it's going to be like, well, what's it? Is this what blacks are supposed to look like? Is this what Asian people are supposed to look like? Like, is this right? Like, no, it's you know what I mean? It's going to be, we're inflicting a lot of harm on that. So absolutely. It's like, there were a lot of things that were one way in the past and we realized it's harmful, right? Hell, I mean, cars didn't even have seatbelts back in the day. But eventually we realized that, yeah, this vehicle is going to be safer if we make these adjustments and we have to enforce some type of safety feature, right? Removing these particular books is a way for us to be like, this is harmful to kids that are coming forward, right?
And
We have
I
to make these
agree.
changes.
The last thing I'll add on to that is I'll take it a step further. Like, I think, again, when it comes to these images, whether it's racist Disney characters, whether it's Dr. Seuss, whatever these images are, like they need to be rooted out, right, and removed, because what we're doing, see, nobody else has to care, but I'm going to care, right, because we meet with these little black and brown children every day. And see, the problem is when they're consuming this material, we're priming them to hate themselves. We're priming them to hate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen some of those images
Oh
of
man.
the people with the big red lips? Listen, it's absurd that we would even be having this conversation, right? There's a reason why they took Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima off the pancake box, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Mammy is an offensive image. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out here who can't understand that because they're wrapped in their privilege and they're wrapped up in the nostalgia of enjoying their pancakes, right? With Aunt Jemima staring at them, right? But for those of us who've had family members who've had to work in those type of positions, right? Who those of us who have roots in the deep South, we don't really find that funny. It's offensive. It's always been offensive.
Always been offensive, right?
So, and the bigger point that I'm making is that when we're inundated with these images, we wonder why at 12, 13, 14, the beauty standard is different for us, right? We can't look at our brown skin and love it, right? We can't look at our full lips, our full noses and love it. Mm-hmm. Why? We're being primed from when we're children to hate ourselves, So you have to essentially wrap yourself in media images that promote, Black love, and beauty and those type of things to be insulated by that, right? Or you're gonna have to have parents that are telling you the opposite every day, So that's kind of the last thing I'll add, because to be very honest, I thought it was an absurd argument from the beginning.
Yeah, totally. And then you know what? And my last thing is that I don't care what prompted it. Now, of course, there's the financial aspect of it, because remember the guy, I think he died. The actual illustrator and author of these books died in like the early 90s. And so, like you said, they're now just be like, oh, we got to pull these off the shelf. So I'm sure it came up somewhere, and some group or somebody, like you said, is sitting in that room and like, hey, like, oh yeah, this is offensive. And like you said, if it affects your bottom line, you're going to have a lot of companies reflecting back or going and say, hey, we got to get this off the shelf, X, Y, and Z. So, I'm sure there's definitely the financial aspect, but guess what? I don't care. As long as you're removing this offensive material off the shelf so it can either be recalled, redone, whatever the situation, so it's no longer doing harm, I'm all for it, right? And so it's not being canceled. No, it's being recalled so this thing can get readjusted and redone and whatever else term or whatever needs to be done to it. So I'm all for that.
I mean, we're just entering in a different time, right? There's going to be a lot of uncomfortable situations like this. Remember in the article they said in 2017, Melania Trump tried to give some library like 10 or 20 Dr. Seuss books. They rejected them and wrote her a letter saying the same thing.
Right.
It is offensive, right? Right. So again, did you hear about that at the time? I know I didn't. You understand?
You're right.
Well, my point is, it's not necessarily a new thing. It's a new story, and it got some traction this time around, but it's not a new thing. So again, doing the right thing is going to cost some people some money, but that's all right. They'll be all right.
They can afford it.
Yeah, they'll be all right.
So yeah, you mentioned something else also, and kind of which will take us into our next topic is media, right? So
right.
We've talked about the part that mental health has played, whether it be music. We've talked about mental health as far as sports, and something that continues to be mental health gets infused with is in the media, right? Whether we're talking about television, where we're talking about film, or where we're just talking about just media coverage. And for me, it it's getting better, but it's also a situation where the media and in film, where you're talking about mental health, just continues to add to the stigmatization, right? It continues to get, I think it misinforms people of what mental health looks like. So, for an example, for me, when you see the antagonist in a movie, or if you see, it's always a person, if they have mental health, it's like schizophrenia, or it's a situation where they're violent, right? So
Right.
as you have a mental health issue or disorder, you're violent, you're going out, either you're killing people or you're killing yourself. And so, I feel like that's something, unfortunately, which adds to or reinforces the stigma. And this is where you have people it starts there. That's just one area of kind of the media, but then it also branches out into so many other different areas and exposures. And I feel like that adds to the stigma. What are your thoughts?
I agree, right? I agree, but I think it's like an outcome we should expect. And let me explain myself very briefly. If we're talking about documentaries, then I want accuracy, right? So we're talking about a documentary, I want accuracy. The problem when we're talking about movies is that it's entertainment, right? And that those people that are working there aren't necessarily clinicians, right? And does it contribute to stigma? Hell yeah, on a very large level, right? Because when you create a movie, it can be factual. You can walk away, feeling inspired. You can walk away wanting to help somebody, but the main thing they want you to do is pay that money, you know what I mean, and be entertained. That's the main thing they want you to do. So if you're writing a movie and one of the characters has bipolar disorder, what I'm going to expect is that the most illustrative, expressive symptoms of bipolar disorder, that's what they're going to focus on. So you better believe they're going to focus on what? Maniac, right? This dude's going to be driving 100 miles an hour. He's going to be spinning 100 racks, right? He's going to be with a whole bunch of women.
Yeah, he's gonna be a totally different person.
Right. Now, because let's be honest, the movie about the way down, the elevator down, it wouldn't be as interesting. It wouldn't put as many asses in the seats, correct?
Right.
So all I'm saying is, you're absolutely correct. I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is the stigma that we see in regards to movies and mental health, that's exactly why we see it, because mental health is a very serious, real thing, and movies are not. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, that's what I got a question for you later, but I want to see, how do you feel about it? Because in the article I was reading, and I'm on both sides of the fence on this one, because they were talking about like using the word crazy, like as an insult, and how that adds to stigmatization and psychotic. And I certainly understand that. You know what I mean? But I certainly understand that. But it's kind of like lay people, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but people who aren't clinicians use the word depression, right? They say, I'm depressed, right? I don't correct every person that says, oh, I'm depressed. They say, oh, no, you're not really. Are you hopeless? Did you get out of bed this morning? Did you eat? I know they're saying they feel sad, you know what I mean? And probably intense sadness, right? Yeah. So when people call somebody crazy, they're really talking about like, all right, this person's acting erratic and strange. You know what I mean? So I get it. But I read it to the end of the article, and it's clinicians writing the article. So it's like if we're in the hospital calling people crazy, then that's a problem. You know what I mean? We're stigmatizing the patients. But somebody in Dunkin' Donuts, that if they get in an argument with you and call you crazy, I mean, just my opinion is that the understanding of that is they don't have a DSM-4 in front of them. They're not saying, all right, psychotic is this and that, and it's not that. It's their understanding of what it is, So I look at that the same way, some people use the word depression, It's right. Kind of like it's not in a professional conversation, so I don't really see, the big deal. But that's my opinion.
I feel like that's also a new term that we tend to use, a lot in our clinical work, is also making its way to that mainstream area. And I'm thinking of the word trigger, right? Okay. So you see and hear that, or not see it, but you hear that, fairly often, where it's just like, oh, well, this song is triggering me, right? Oh, this song triggers me. And I get it. I used to cringe sometimes when I would hear it kind of tossed. Yeah, I would, I would cringe when I would hear it tossed around, kind of so in such a cavalier manner. Um,
Yeah.
but I get it, right? It's like it's not in the sense of like, you know, when we're using it and we're documenting and so on and so forth. You know, I know it's not being used in that same extent. And I know it's really like, okay,
Right.
whatever a person's referring to, it prompted a response to me. But that I'm seeing that word is being used more, or is being normalized, right? I feel like it's being used definitely more frequently. Like even like me and Trin, like if we're talking or something and she'll saying like, Dad, you know, this, you know, that thing triggered me. I know you don't like that word, Dad. Like she has to do like a whole she has to do a whole disclaimer. I'm like, Trin, it's all right. Like I'm cool. Like, you know, but I feel like that's also making its way into like that same kind of depression realm. And you know, and like I get it, like the same thing with when people are saying that, you know, I'm not breaking my up. Let me bring out my Beck scale and be like, well, what do you mean? You know,
Right.
I get it. Like people are saying like, hey, you know what? They had a bad day. They're, you know, something happened and they're not feeling in a good mood. Or like you said, they're sad. You know, I know it's not to that extent, but you are starting to, you know, at least what I'm noticing is that more of those terms are kind of being brought in. Now, if that is in a sense where it's like, okay, it's kind of taking the curtain down and kind of you know, stigmatizing things as far as like, okay, people are more open to talking about it because of the root of that word, I'm all for it. But I do feel like the same way like depression, I feel like trigger is also making its way into that. And I mean, like I get it. Like you know, it's funny when you look at TV shows or movies when they have someone that's experiencing like a mental health issue. It's like the issue, of course, because it's entertainment, they have to like really make it pronounced, right? Like you were saying.
Right.
So it's like if someone has either the mental health condition is really good for them or it's really bad,
Right.
right? So
Right.
like if you're watching like if you're watching like Monk, and I love Monk, I love watching that
Right.
show, but it like his OCD makes him the greatest detective in the world.
Right.
Like his, you know,
Right.
it makes him, he's noticing, he's you know, all these other different intangibles come alive and he's able to solve like,
Or like
you know,
the Good Doctor or one of these shows.
right. So like their mental health issue is working so well for them. And then on the other side, on the other opposite end of the spectrum, it's either making them, like you said, really unstable. They're out there killing people, and it's the root of all these other different things. So I, you know, I get that entertainment value. It's just more of a thing where it's more harmful for someone that is experiencing it, and not just the diagnosis itself. I feel like
Right.
even how they depict like inpatient units, right? So for
All right.
someone, you know, you and I, you know, have worked on inpatient. I currently work there now, and you know, the way it's usually depicted on screen is that everyone's walking around in gowns, right? All the
Right.
techs or the people are they're wearing all white, right? And it's like
Mhm.
everyone, they're walking around, they're drooling, and you know, they can't get the words together. Everyone's responding to internal stimuli, or they're talking to themselves and all these other different things. And that's the unit, right? That's the whole psych unit. And
No, you're right. You're right.
you know, and I know you go on a psych unit, the way, I mean, first of all, they're regular people, so they're dressed casually, right? They're dressed in regular
Right.
like sometimes you can't, if an employee doesn't have an ID badge on, you can't even tell the difference sometimes between the patient
Right.
and staff because of the way people are just presenting themselves. But
Right.
that
Right.
adds to, unfortunately, someone that may need, you know, to be hospitalized. Like, I'm not going to the nut house, I'm not crazy, like you said, all these other different things kind of roll. And that's what they kind of get
Mhm.
the depiction, because, you know, and I know we've had patients that was either like their first or second times being hospitalized, and they're just like, oh, it's nothing like I thought it was gonna be, right? Like it's
Right.
not like everything's not in all white, everything's not caged up and all other different things. So, you know,
No,
that's
that's a fact.
like, you know, for certain things, it gets like that, it adds to it. And I think that's where, you know, it's kind of productive to what we're, you know, trying to get people help. So, you know,
I got a question for you,
go
kind of
ahead.
along the same lines, since we're talking about inpatient, right? When I was reading that article, they were talking about, somebody raised the question about whether Halloween contributes to the stigma of mental health. And what they meant by that was, and I started thinking about it, what they was thinking about is, I mean, what they were saying was, excuse me, you ever been to like a haunted house or something?
Yeah.
So a lot of these haunted houses, they're like insane asylums, right? The patients are, the locks broke. Everybody's running around crazy. People with straight jackets, all of these things. So they were saying like the culture of Halloween. And I mean, if you've seen the movies like Saw and all these other movies, a lot of them, some of them are set up like that. Like like you either get locked in this insane asylum or you get sent there and you're not supposed to be there and intimidated by all of the scary people, right? So they were saying that, that kind of contributes as well. So I was just wondering how you feel about that, because when I read that, I was like, well, man, I'm guilty too, because that's one thing I used to love doing is going to a haunted house. And I never thought of it like that, even if that was the theme, I never thought of it like, I thought of it like, well, I'm going to have a fun time, see if I get scared, but I never thought of it like, this might be disparaging or stigmatizing to individuals, that I work with in another capacity, Now I'm gonna be thinking about it. But what do you think? You think it's BS or what?
No, I think it does add to it. And here in Philly, we have like in Philadelphia and then like on some of the outskirts, like Halloween, like some of the old closed down asylums are like they turned into haunted houses. Like so,
I know.
Yeah. So yeah, I do. Because I still think there's a certain population of people when you think of asylum, that's what they think of. Right.
Okay.
They automatically revert back to that. Like I'll still hear some patients sometimes, or even some even coworkers, right? Older coworkers will be like, oh, well, when something happens on the unit, it's like, oh, the inmates are running the asylum, right? Because they still think when you think of asylum, you think of crazy people. You think of people that have been, you're inpatient, and they don't distinguish like, okay, well, all right, well, we have like these more modern psych units or anything. No, they automatically kind of think inpatient. They think asylum. So yeah, absolutely. I think I believe it does reinforce or kind of add to that stereotype for some general people that are kind of able to put two and two together of what an asylum used to be, or what, kind of the history of the word. I maybe not so much younger folks that aren't really familiar with it, but yeah, I mean, even when I went into one, this is probably a few years ago. Yeah, I was definitely like in between, like when people were popping out, I'm looking at it like, oh wow, this is what they used to look like, huh? Wow, this is kind of crazy. Like, like I'm looking at it like, like, and then I'm thinking like I'm like dreading like the conditions that some of these patients were into when it was an asylum. Like, that's rough. But yeah, I would say that aspect of it. I don't know if overall Halloween, but definitely when you do have, the scary aspect or the frightening. Yeah, absolutely. Especially to someone, if you just visited an asylum on some, the Halloween aspect of things, and then, God forbid you get hospitalized, that's probably gonna make its way to the forefront of your mind when you're having some of these thoughts and all these different things are running in there. So yeah, I think it plays a part.
Okay.
Yeah. So, something else, right? I don't know if you've ever noticed this, is that I've always kind of, especially since we got into this field, like as we were going through like our practicums and even in our master's program, like, as we became therapists, like on TV and film, how they depict like the clinicians or the therapists, right? And it is just like
it's terrible.
It is, man. Like they make it so unethical. Like
I listen, they be dating patients, doing all kinds of making deals with patients, all kinds. I mean, listen, it's crazy, but it goes. It's the same thing that they do, with the mental health disorders, right? Like think about The Sopranos, think about Dr. Melfi,
right?
All the stuff she was doing. Like, I mean, come on, it's but it's a show. You know what I mean? So I can dig it because it's a show.
But it's just the thing where you do still have some people that's what they think therapy looks like, right?
Oh yeah.
They still think it's, you're laying on the couch and you're just getting asked the question, how do you feel about that? How does that make you feel? Right? That's the only thing we got in our arsenal, right? It's just like that's the only thing and we're gonna ask you about your childhood too. Don't forget about that. We're gonna ask you, we're gonna get more Freudian on you.
I can't tell you how many people that I respect that really ask me like, yo, can you read my mind? Like really ask me that. Can you read my mind? And I'll be like, yo, if I could, I'd be in Atlantic City, get in the bag. I wouldn't be doing this
Right.
respectfully. And I love my patients, but I would be in Atlantic City and Vegas getting a bag. You ready to get into this last article?
Yeah, man. So absolutely. So switching it off to from media, something that just came up, something that's really popular in our culture. Even not just nationally, but globally. Now, we're gonna take a trip across the pond, and recently we came out with an interview with Meghan Markle and what's it, Prince Harry, right? That's his name.
Yep.
All right, so we're
Prepare,
with
yep.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and they had an interview with Oprah, and so they detailed a lot came out during this interview. And in the midst of this interview, Meghan Markle talks about her experiences with suicide, right, or having contemplating suicide, just kind of due to everything that was going on, a list of things, and yeah, I caught some of the highlights. I didn't see all of the interview, but I caught some of the highlights before I left out for work this morning. And yeah, it was one. It was a lot to unpack, just from what the segments that I was shown, and really disheartening. Just kind of the response and of her journey dealing with the mental health aspect of it. What were your thoughts and takeaways from it?
I mean, listen, I didn't even know what I was hearing at times, right? Because to come from somebody of that stature, I mean, she was saying she had clear, consistent suicidal ideation, right?
Mhm.
I think the most troubling, although I wasn't, put it like this, like I was shocked and I was offended, but I wasn't surprised by when she said, she was dismissed and they got a lack of sympathy from the royal family, right? Because if we talk about like brand and business, right? Pepsi is worried about their image, right? They are nothing compared to the royal family in terms of, not in terms of what I think, but in terms of, we're talking about on the grand scale, right? In terms of image. So if Pepsi cares about their image, you could think what the Queen thinks, right? So anything that's gonna kind of portray them as either weak or not having it all together, I can see them trying to contain and manage, right? Now the strange part is that, well, I'll get to that later. But and then I think it just goes back to one, what we were talking about last episode when we were talking about how financial wealth does not equal wellness, mental health wellness, right? People just have to understand that money does not insulate you. It provides you with a bunch of resources, but it does not insulate you, and that sometimes it makes the fall a lot greater, because you can avoid treatment for so much longer because you got the resources. But I just think it's very important. I got to give her credit because, I mean, again, every 30 seconds somebody dies from suicide. Almost 1 million people are dying each year. So for her to kind of bring awareness and honestly tell it like it is and say, listen, the royal family didn't even support us, So what, to me, what she's saying to millions of people is, so don't be, discouraged if your family doesn't support you, if your spouse doesn't support you, if your work doesn't support you, go get the help that you need, So again, I think it was a good article, but I was kind of surprised that I was hearing it, right? Because I didn't expect to hear it from them,
I mean,
what was most interesting to you about it?
well, one, I guess it started to kind of make sense because you saw. I mean, I don't keep up with them as much, but I knew that they were breaking away, or at least they have
Right.
started the process of kind of breaking away from the royal family. And so, I know that that's pretty much unheard of, right? For anyone
Right.
to like, hey, we're going to separate ourselves, we're going to do our own thing, we're going to relinquish whatever
Mhm.
titles and, things of that nature. So for me, I believe that was a red flag. Right. And I'm sure that was something that they didn't like because again, it's making them look, like vulnerable and all these other
Right.
different things that are gonna get thrown. Um, like you said, it definitely highlights that one, mental health doesn't discriminate. Right. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how wealthy you are, doesn't matter male, female, it doesn't discriminate. So it definitely that came up for me. And then also, like you said, she highlighted and really personified what a lot of people are afraid of when it comes to talking to someone and trying to reach out for help, which was
Right.
you're fearful of one, how is this going to be received? Right. If I come out and I
Right.
say, like, hey, I'm thinking about harming myself, or I've been having these thoughts of killing myself, like, one of the concerns, at least from what I've learned from patients and clients, is that they're fearful of, like, what's going to be the response.
Right.
Am I going to, get that sympathy or empathy or support from people, or am I going to get judged? Right. Because what happens if you come out and then you don't get that support?
Right.
What do you do then? And it's unfortunate, like you said, that she, per her perspective and what she said, that she didn't get any support. They were just like, yeah, no.
And
And this is in addition to, they've talked about mental health. I think the brother has gotten counseling, and so it's it's unfortunate, not surprising. I feel like she definitely personified what a lot of people are fearful of when they do it. And then also, really quick, the guilt, right? She mentioned how even though she was experiencing these thoughts and feelings, that she didn't want to come forward, or she was kind of resistant in telling her own husband because of the situation with his mother, right? With Princess Diana, and how, she passed away. So she's thinking, like, well, do I bring this to him, knowing that, like, he's experienced death, and like, so she's experienced guilt, and she's still kind of thinking compassionately about him, when she's dealing with so much of herself. And then it's like, also, she's putting that to the side. And how many people do we know, or how many patients have we dealt with, that have said, yeah, I've been feeling this way for a long time, but I gotta take care of mom. I'm taking care of my family. I'm still working, or I am mom. I'm keeping the house together. I'm dad. I got to pay these bills. So they're
right.
putting their feelings and their experiences on the back burner and still going forward with it. So, those were two things that stepped out for me.
I kind of, again, just kind of thinking about this interview, it made me kind of go back to, again, the pedestal we put individuals that are, I don't want to say entertainment, because they're not necessarily entertainers, but people who are famous, right? And more than famous. These people are more than famous, but
Right.
they definitely fit in the category of individuals that are put up on a pedestal, right? Um, and the assumptions we automatically make about them, right? That they have their lives together, they're emotionally stable, their family is supportive, and they live this fairy tale life, right? When the only thing we really know about them is one thing, that they are financially stable. That is it. And half the time, we think we know that until somebody, an entertainer, rapper, singer, mogul, whoever, files for bankruptcy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So again, it just kind of brought me back to, like, our perception, right? I mean, and just on a much smaller level, I'm sure you have patients, kids, they ask you some questions. They think Dr. Kyle don't have no problems. You know what I mean? With the way some of their questions would be phrased, right? And of course, it comes from the position you're in. But again, it's a matter of perception. Like, a lot of times, individuals don't kind of look at people, especially the people that they kind of look up to, as having problems, and the fact of the matter is, they do. And each individual story is exactly that. It's an individual story. You know what I mean? And I think people fail to realize that, right? Because even if I start at a level that is quote unquote higher than you, you know what I mean? There's still going to be obstacles at that level, and for that individual, all they're going to know is the obstacles they have on that level, So somebody who's up higher can say, listen, you don't have it as bad because you're not up here. And somebody who's trying to get to their level can say, listen, you don't know what it's like down here. But it goes back to what I said before. Each individual story is exactly what that is. It's an individual story. And we got to look at it like that. We got to look at each individual person has their own, experience. And again, and I don't want to just generalize, but how many people do you think, if you sent out a survey and was like, would you like to be the Duchess of Sussex? Would you like to switch wherever you're at now and be the Duchess of Sussex, you would probably have hundreds of thousands of people that will want to be in her position.
Yeah, totally.
Do they understand the pressures that come along with that position? No. You know what I mean? As we don't expect them to. But I just think, again, but now if you were to talk to people who are in royal life and ask them, would you rather be a member of the family or do you want to be the Duchess of Sussex? They might have a different answer for you. They might tell you, hell no, I don't want to be in that spotlight. I want to be around, but I don't want to be in that spotlight, because they have a better idea of the pressures that go along with that. So it just brings me back to, the dissonance between our perception of individuals' reality and what their lives are really like,
Mm-hmm. And even what she explained as I was like kind of listening to, her the interview, even though she's, the Duchess of, Sussex or whatever the area is over there, what she was explaining of her experiences personified a lot of what we're going through, right? A lot of what our people are going through, right? She mentioned the family dynamics, right? So she mentioned going into a whole different family and having to get accustomed to their culture, their rules, their establishment, and then the race aspect of it, right? So I don't know if you heard that part where they're just like they're making comments to her about, oh well, we're not sure about the baby's skin, we're not sure, is it going to be too dark? Oh yeah, bro. You got to yes. It gets like, so when you listen to more of what she was saying that she was experiencing, like no, and you're looking at it from an empathic lens, you're like, oh, I can see, like, there, of course, there's no one cause of depression or your suicidal thoughts, but you're like, you start to see, okay, I can see how all of this is building up and what she's got going on. Yeah, so she's already getting, the concerns about the family, right? So it doesn't sound like she was seeing eye to eye with the family, originally, or kind of going into the thing, because she's coming from this acting in Hollywood kind of background. And then, as there are comments that she said she was experiencing from the family. She didn't name who, but she's saying some pretty prominent figures in the family about her baby, the skin tone, right? So now you got the racial element and the aspect of things, and then the media, right? So whatever she's doing, and how we've talked about, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a singer, whether you're whatever public figure, like whatever you're doing is going to get highlighted in the media. Like, so now your privacy is pretty much gone. So, and it wasn't like she was foreign to that, but it's probably even tenfold now that she's with the royal family. So as you're looking at all of these different things, yeah, absolutely. Like her mental wellness, I mean, was already like, you can just imagine how it got to that point, right? So that's why when I heard those different parts of the interview, especially with the family dynamics and then the racial things that she's getting subjected to, and if I don't know who came over with her, like as far as her family, but I think she has some other issues or drama kind of going on with her own family. So imagine you being over there by yourself, lack of support, right? And you got this whole family like this, it's heavy. So yeah, like
that's a lot.
Yeah. So like, listen, I definitely if you get an opportunity, man, like to listen to more excerpts or the interview. Yeah, it was really heavy, and it's really unfortunate what she had to go through. And it seems like she was, unfortunately, outside of her husband and her own family that she's created, it seems like she was really just kind of taking everything in on her own. So yeah, it's a lot of layers. It seems like that she was to the story.
It's funny that you bring up the family support, because if I recall correctly, I think she was going through something with her father like a year or two ago, where he was like selling pictures of her, of them or something, because he didn't get invited to the wedding. I don't know. I don't follow this stuff, but just it's been on the news, here and there. So again, it's definitely an interesting story. But it's just amazing, right? Every day. This is 1 week. We got mental health in the news every day,
Absolutely. So, I hope with, her coming out, one, she's able to get the help and treatment that she needs, hopefully also her being as courageous to come out and share her story, that also prompts other individuals. Like you said, you know what, if the Duchess is able to talk about this, and she, hopefully that'll prompt and more people will follow, because like you said, every 30 seconds, man, like that's a staggering stat, but it's a real stat. right? It's happening. Like as we're speaking, this is someone unfortunately, is committing the act of suicide. So I'm hoping that, her coming out promotes or prompts other people to come out, and that she gets to the treatment that that she needs. And it's an ongoing conversation, man. Like this is why we're here. This is why we have this platform, to continue to educate, to continue to promote the wellness, because it's needed. So I'm
Yeah.
that's definitely wish her the best as she goes forward.
I mean, I agree, man, and I'll just end with this. I say it all the time, but I end with this. Like, like we take care of our car, we take care of our house, we take care of our medical issues, but what we don't take care of is mental health. So again, it's important that we address these issues when they come up and not sweep them under the rug. Because you need to take care of your mental health at least as well as you take care of your car, right? Most people I know have that little oil change sticker right up in the corner. Jiffy Lube leaves it for you, right? Because they remind you every 3,000 miles, I want to see you, right? And again, you got to treat your mental health the same way. So if your body is giving you a sign, or emotionally, physically, that you need some support, some assistance, intervention, then you need to go get it now. You can't wait until tomorrow. You need to go get it now. If you're a single parent and you say, I'm gonna put it off because I got to take care of my kid, God willing, God forbid, if you experience a crisis, then you can't do that, right? So you got to take care of your mental health the same way you take care of your physical health, your house, your car, and everything else. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Absolutely, man. Like you said, like don't wait for that indicator light's gonna come on. It's letting you know that you're running low on that oil. So don't wait for the car to break down, right? Don't wait for your mental health. Don't wait for that don't wait for it to break down. Like you're gonna get that indicator light on your dashboard. So definitely at that point when you start to notice something's wrong, definitely reach out, get that help, because nobody knows you better than you, right? So absolutely, man. So I appreciate you being here. Again, guys, everybody listening, appreciate everyone listening and watching. Again, subscribe, follow, like, leave comments, so we can definitely get ideas. We want to continue to talk about things that are relevant to what's happening not only in the world, but what's also going on in your life, guys. So episode 4, the Black Psychologist Podcast, we're here, we're signing off. We appreciate the love and support, everybody being here. All right, sir. Talk to you soon. Later, man.
Later.